Alright, so this is day 7 of our trip to Arizona. We are in the Coronado National Forest on my last night, and almost every night we've gone out utilizing a bug catching technique called night lighting. And so that's where you take different spectrums of light and you go and set them out in a dark rural location. A lot of people use white sheets either on the ground or suspended in some way. So basically, you attract a number of invertebrates that are coming through the night and coming to the light, and then you can survey them while they're on the sheet. Some people collect them and some people just like to see them or photograph them. Oh, I don't know if that was a bird or a bat. I think it was a bird, I'm not sure. Anyway, something just flew through here. So we're up in the Chiricahua National Forest? No, Coronado National Forest.
Onion Saddle.
Yes, at a location called the Onion Saddle, and so that's near one of the peaks. And when we were driving up here, the roads were pretty good. I wouldn't say you need a four-wheel drive, but you probably need a larger vehicle. You wouldn't be able to come out here in like a Prius or something. It started pouring down on us, and I thought, are we gonna slide down the mountainside? But we didn't. It subsided, and the air is just so crisp and cool and beautiful, and the sunset was insane. I tried to take a few photos, but what the camera captured was nothing compared to the actual beauty. So anyway, we're just gonna show you the setup of some of the different lights and kind of how it goes, and then we'll let you guys take a peek as we start night lighting. So enjoy.
I don't wanna seem all rude, but I can't remember where I am. A mattress on an old wood floor and fragments of the night before. I don't wanna waste no time, and you don't wanna waste your love. Even though your kiss on fire, my mind is all blurry now. Feeling low, hard to breathe, but this I know, I won't leave. Waking up in a bed with my head on the chest that I don't even know, but I guess it makes sense.
Well, let's talk about tarantula. The
History?
tarantula hobby back in the old days being yeah, the 80s, the 90s. I mean, there was people looking at tarantulas way before that,
Right.
but the hobby didn't seem to really blossom so much until, I would say, my guess would be like the 80s.
Yep, pretty early 80s.
Yeah.
Which you were involved at that time. That was a little before my time.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the first big dealers or breeders that you remember.
Well, the very first guy, and I really think that he was probably the premier and one of the first, certainly one of the best ever to this day, was a guy who lived in Kenmore, Washington. And his name is, hopefully still is, for all I know, Al McKee.
Mm-hmm.
And Al had, for the longest time, and for all I know, he may still hold the record for the most articles written for the BTS, British Tarantula Society journal that they put out.
Now, he had his own little paper called the Tarantula Times or something.
No. That was a different guy. That was a guy named Dale Lund.
Oh, right.
But yeah, we'll talk about Dale Lund in a minute. But Al McKee was a guy, again, he lived in Kenmore, Washington, and he was one of the first guys to successfully breed Brachypelma auratum.
Mm-hmm.
And he was pretty proud of that fact, and rightfully so, because he had some really, really nice specimens.
Yeah, they tended to be have a nicer contrast back then.
They did, yeah. And the ones that he bred were really nice. He got, he was able to get some stuff in that was direct from the source a lot of the times. And so some of the stuff that he got in and was able to actually successfully breed were really nice.
So
and of course,
he wanted to name that species, didn't he?
Yeah. He he didn't even know for sure what the scientific name was of the things yet, and Al believed that they should be named Brachypelma flammeus or flammeus because it was a flame knee tarantula. A little unbeknownst to him, of course, it already had a name. It had already been described, but he was apparently was unaware. And so he told me that I went to visit him a couple of times, to purchase spiders from him and just talk to him because I was starting to get more into the hobby. And Al wanted to name them Brachypelma flammeus, but of course that was, never went through. Another couple of spiders that Al was able to get that you just do not, I anyways, haven't seen. Of course, I'm not as much into the tarantulas as I used to be, but were the, at the time, they were Aphanopelma seamani. It seems like they changed the genus on those, but I'm not sure if they did. But anyways, the zebra tarantulas. And these ones that he got were from Costa Rica.
Right.
And they were amazingly marked. They were a very dark color, and the striping on their legs was really, really white. So there was no doubt that they were the zebra tarantulas, as they're called. And he was able to produce offspring that were also the same color. Now, the ones you see or have seen since then seem like they're pretty, I don't know, the striping on their legs is, just not the same. And I don't even think they even come from Costa Rica anymore, for all I know. But
some people are theorizing that those are being hybridized. There's no way to know, really, unless DNA studies are done, which the animals need to be killed first. So, I never want that done with my animals.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Again, Al really knew what he was doing, and he was really good at it. So he was able to produce some very, very nice specimens for people. Another one that he had and that he bred was Brachypelma vagans. And the thing about the ones that Al was able to produce was the fact, and I've never seen any others like this. I've seen a lot of tarantulas, The ones that he came up with or was able to produce were like a jet black, yet their abdomens had absolute fire engine red hairs on them, and they were just gorgeous.
Wow.
So Al really knew what he was doing, and he was the go-to guy at the time, especially in the area that I was living in Montana at the time. Well, we were living in Montana at the time.
I wonder what year Al started in inverts.
I don't know, but the weird thing about it is that one day Al decided it seems like, and it was very quickly, one day he decided he was done with tarantulas. He got tired of putting up with all the rules and regulations and all the people that were trying to shut him down because they didn't understand what he was doing, and he said, okay, that's it, I'm done. And then he went into like breeding turtles or something like that. I don't know. He went into some other natural, thing, life form that he was interested in. I don't know for sure what it was, but I'm sure whatever it was, he was very successful at, because the guy was, a virtual genius when it came to stuff like that. So that was him, and then there was Dale Lund.
Yeah.
I never met Dale. I talked to him on the phone.
Is he English?
No. He lives, I think he lives somewhere in the southeastern United States.
Okay.
And Dale started putting out this little flyer, periodical, whatever you want to call it, and it was something that he typed up on his home typewriter, I think, because at the time they didn't even have computers.
Right.
And it was a periodical called the Tarantula Times. And so I had, years after the Tarantula Times had its run and actually folded, I contacted Dale and was able to convince him. Of course, it wasn't for free. He did it for a fee. But I managed to convince him, and I'm very thankful that he did this for me, he went ahead and sent me a complete set of all of the different Tarantula times that were ever put out.
Every issue.
Yeah, so I've got every issue of that. It's most of them are copies. I mean, there's a couple of originals in there. Most of them are copies, but at least I've got those. And the thing is that Dale Lund, who has, I think he's written a book or two, hasn't he? I think.
Yes, he has. What years do you remember? Did that start and end?
It was the early 80s is all I can tell. I have the exact month and year on the binder that I have those in, but I can't remember what they were. But he also started the original, I believe, American Tarantula Society.
Right.
That had members.
Yeah.
And they all, whatever became of that particular society. Of course, later we had the other more official American Tarantula Society that, that was, I think, originally run by Bob Breen, Dr. Bob Breen, who lived down in, Carlsbad, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, originally, the absolute original American Tarantula Society, as far as I know, was started by Dale Lund.
Wonder where he's at these days.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm sure he's probably not still in it. Of course, that was almost 30, almost 40 years ago, so yeah, I'm sure he's moved on to other things. Let's see, who else was there?
Let's see, what about...
who do you remember?
What about...
Mascareño, there was that guy.
That's the only name I could think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Mascareño?
I remember,
he was a theater,
he was
an actor.
He was an actor who had little tiny bit parts in walk-on parts type things in couple of different shows, but he was also a tarantula dealer. Now, I don't even know if I'd want to call him a breeder because I don't know how much breeding he did.
Yeah.
But it was always funny because in his advertisements that you would see in some of these tarantula periodicals, Mascareño would advertise proudly that he was the most expensive guy around, and it's like he wore it as a badge of honor of some sort.
He always seemed to embellish everything that he did.
Yeah. Well, he was, he could take and sell you a curly hair and make it sound like it was the most beautiful, absolute, gorgeous A1 tarantula that ever lived. That guy was, he was good at what he did. But I never met him. I talked to him, but I never met him. And he was quite a character. At some point, he had told me, I think, that I had heard that somebody who had an issue with him had dumped some, I think it was Heteroscogia immaculata, or it might have been Stromatopelma calceatum, I'm not sure. It was one of those nasty, aggressive African-type species of tarantulas. They had dumped a bunch of them in his bed, and he didn't know it, and he got into bed, and of course he got bitten. Now, how true, how much validity there is to that story, I don't know. But
speaking of his bed, what do you recall about the situation where there was some point when he apparently stole another dealer's wife? Who was that all about?
Yeah, no, I don't. I didn't really hear much about that. That was things that I had heard from other people, and I really couldn't speak to that because I don't know much about it other than, there was some kind of animosity that had built up between him and another dealer, and it didn't go well. So I'm not real sure.
So from what I recall, are they breeding?
Yeah, do you remember any of that? I'm not sure.
So from what I recall, there were other breeders who had felt like he had kind of gotten one over on him. One whose wife ended up leaving him and going with Mascareño, and so there was bad blood between them. So the two guys were writing each other letters and faxing each other letters.
Oh, really? Okay.
Talking about how they were going to sabotage his business and they were going to take him down or take him out or something
really?
like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I don't really know much about that.
Somehow that he got wind of that message and misinterpreted that they were going to murder him, And so at the expos that he was vending at, he would have his staff set up his booth and then duck in and duck out with big sunglasses on. And,
Yeah.
you know, because he really thought that these guys were going to drop a rock on his head or
Yeah.
I don't know
now,
what.
Now, all of this, of course, is rumor, and there's nothing to really substantiate any of that, but it's fun to
Yes.
share the stories.
Fun speculation.
Tarantulas
I
in the old days.
I
Yeah.
don't know if he's still alive.
I don't know either. And that's the thing, you know, we're talking about, you know, between 30 and 40 years ago, so we don't know, you know, who's still around. Well, here's another guy, Brian Capiz.
Yes.
Remember him?
I do.
Arachnocentric.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a character too. I used to talk to him on the phone, and you know, one of the things that was pretty, he was pretty good. He remembered, like I would call him and tell him some tarantulas that I might have been interested in, and he would remember it, and the next time I would talk to him, he would say, "Oh, hey, by the way, I've got so-and-so that you were looking for," which really impressed me. And
Now, was it Bryant that sold you on the Nandu Carapuensis?
no, that was another guy. That was another guy named, I think that was a guy named Rob Jericho, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But Bryant, yeah, he was the go-to guy for, I mean, this was after Al had already gotten out of the business, Al McKee. And
Brian got really big, and I remember I
Yeah.
met him at the Orlando show in Florida in like 96 or 97.
Okay.
And I remember he had a tank top on and a tattoo of Poecilotheria on his chest. And that's
Oh, yeah.
the only time I ever met him.
Yeah. No, I never met him in person. I know that it seems like I remember he had, well, I do remember he told me that he had a girlfriend who was a stewardess, and because of that he was able to get really cheap or, you know, next to nothing tickets overseas, and so he would go over and then pick up all these great tarantulas that, you know, basically nobody else could get. And that's,
Right.
now, whether or not that's the only way he was able to get a lot of the great stuff he got, I don't know. But he did, that's from the horse's mouth. Brian did tell me that that's how he got a lot of his good stuff, and he did have good stuff.
Now, Europe, Germany, and Britain, they've been way ahead of us in the invert hobby.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about some of the stuff that you were first importing, some of the first stuff that you had imported.
Yeah,
personally.
well, I was a member of the British Tarantula Society back in the early 80s, and there was a business that I learned of through the British Tarantula Society Journal that was over in England, and it sold tarantulas. I don't remember the name of the company. I do remember the name of the guy that I dealt with, and at that time everything was through snail mail and maybe phone calls. We didn't have the internet. We
Right.
didn't have any of that other stuff. And the guy's name was Ian. I don't remember his last name. All I remember is his name was Ian. And they had some pretty cool stuff, one of which was a newer, fantastic spider that everybody was starting to talk about at the time called a Poecilotheria regalis. And I ordered one from him. And I also ordered a number of, there was another spider that they called a doppelganger. And as it turns out, a doppelganger was just a Cyclosternum fasciatus. But at the time, the common name of it was a doppelganger tarantula, and it sounded really neat. So I bought one of those from them, and a bunch of other species. But the one that I think I got my first Psalmopius cambridgei through them. And when I got the spiders, most of them were alive. There was a couple that were dead. And then there was some other ones that they said, even though when I had spoken with them or had contacted them, they said that they had in stock. But as it turns out, they didn't have them in stock when I ordered them, so I didn't get them. So I did get the Poecilotheria regalis, and it was magnificent.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was gorgeous.
Was it an adult?
It was an adult female. And at the time, my understanding was, now whether or not this was accurate, but at the time, that guy that sold it to me had told me that he believed that I was probably the first guy in the United States to actually have an adult Poecilotheria regalis. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. And I had her for a long time. I kept her for quite a few numbers. I never bred her because at the time, you know, Poecilotheria was pretty new to the hobby. And I never did breed her. I had her for a number of years, and she finally died. But it was a great, beautiful, big tarantula.
Now, think back, if you can, to some of the species that you reproduced. I'm pretty sure that you and I were some of the first to reproduce certain species in the U.S. What do you remember?
Oh, gosh. That's been so long ago. It's hard for me to remember what I... man, I mean, you know, the spiders that I kept, the spiders that I bred, the ones I had success with, the ones I didn't, I can't even remember all of them. I know that I was able to successfully breed, let's see, at the time, Chromatopelmis anapubescens.
Right.
Nandu carapoensis was one that we got some, me and Mark Hart, I think, had gotten some success with those. I also did, of course, Tarantulas murinus. I did, well, at the time, Avicularia versicolor, now it's Caribbean versicolor. What other ones was I successful with? Cripe, I can't even remember. What do you? Oh, I did Psalmopius cambridgei, Psalmopius erminii, I think. I don't even remember. I don't remember all the different ones that I met with success. But it was fun because, in its own way, it was at the time there wasn't a lot known or a lot shared.
Yeah, so it was it was all discovery as you went along.
Well, you were able to get some. I remember I lent you a male sabulosum, and you were able to successfully breed that one. I was never able to breed any Brachypelmas.
Yep.
But you were able. I was surprised and pretty amazed that you were able to get the sabulosum, because I was so unsuccessful, and I was successful at breeding other things. So I was pretty amazed at that one.
It's interesting. Well, and somehow through all these years, I've still never been able to reproduce Brachypelma smithi, and
Me neither. I never was.
Part of the problem is how long they take to grow up, and now how expensive they are. Because I remember the first time you saw a large adult in the store.
Oh crap! I remember we used to go into. When I say we, me and my family, of course, I was always interested in bugs. I'd go. I mean, I remember back when. You would go into any pet store, and almost all of them would have at least one, if not more, Brachypelma smithi. At the time, they were called smithi. Now they're Homori or whatever it is. But anyways, you would see them all over the place, and they were $24.99 for a full-grown adult female Brachypelma smithi.
Now those were all imported, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure they were, but they were. I mean, they were very common, and that was. I think that was part of the problem, is that they were so common and they were so over-collected that's what made the government decide that they were now rare and needed to be protected.
Right.
So, anyways, that was way back then when. I mean, that was even before I even got into the hobby per se. You would see those tarantulas for sale for, $24.95 or something like that, and it's like, wow. Nowadays, you couldn't touch an adult female for under $100 probably.
Oh, like 150 or 200 or they're.
But then getting back to some of the dealers.
Well, tell me about your experience with Rob Cherico.
Well, I don't want to use the word shyster, so I won't.
All right.
But Rob Cherico, I understand, may God rest his soul, I understand that he's no longer with us. I don't know if that's true, but Rob talked up this one tarantula that he thought I should have, and it was, there's a Howard eye. I gotta get that.
Let's show that.
Waking up in a bed with my head on the chest that I don't even know, but I guess it makes sense, 'cause I know we both learned everything that happened last night. So just come back to bed. I wanna hold you. Come back to bed.
So getting back to Rob Chirico and the Nandu carapoensis. Rob had, I was talking to Rob on the phone. He was a guy that was able to come up with some unusual specimens, unusual species too, and I don't know where he got them. I think he was kind of coattailing off of a bigger importer like Mark Hart with West Coast Zoological or something like that. But anyways, Rob, who was based in California, had told me about this absolutely gorgeous tarantula that he thought I should have. It was pretty expensive, and that I should try to breed. So it was 100. I think the tarantula at the time, and this was in the probably late 80s by then, was $168 for this tarantula, and I said, okay, Rob, I'll take one of those. So he sent me this. It wasn't an adult, full-grown adult female yet, but it was a female, immature adult Nandu carapoensis, and I don't know how to express how underimpressed I was with that tarantula. I mean, it was not that colorful. It was not that amazing. It looked like almost like a Brachypelma sabulosum itself. It was just, I mean, and I felt like, that guy could probably sell ice cubes to an Eskimo, So, but anyways, I kept it, and of course, because I'd already bought it, and as time went on, that particular species became not only more common, but less expensive in the hobby. So,
and never really became popular for some reason.
given the way that it, what it looks like, it's just not that attractive of a species, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
Yes.
And then who else? Oh, speaking of Mark Hart, I bought a number of tarantulas from him. Nice guy. I talked to him a lot of times. He ran that West Coast, I think it was called West Coast Zoological or West Coast Reptiles or something like that. And it was based out of California. As it turns out, I understand that he eventually moved to Florida and kept the name, but he didn't keep the business for very long after he went to Florida. So I don't know what Mark's doing these days. But anyways, I bought a bunch of tarantulas from him. But I've got one kind of a funny story about him, and I hold no ill will towards Mark at all. He had some tarantulas that I was interested in buying, and so I put in an order with him, and I elected, in my cheapness, to have him ship them just normal mail as opposed to next day air. And the thing about that is, where I lived at the time, I was living in Helena, Montana. And even if somebody shipped something to me next day air, it always took more than the next day to get there because of the area I was located in. It was just one of those things that, the post office would tell me, oh, well, you live in an area that we don't deliver to the next day, and all this kind of crap. Yeah. So regardless of the fact that somebody would pay the extra money to get something next day, they never really got it next day. Anyways, the point is that I had Mark's ship that regular mail, since it probably wasn't going to get to me next day anyways. So the package comes in, and this spider that I had ordered from Mark was dead. One of the spiders I had ordered, it was the main focus of the particular shipment at that time, and it was dead. So I called Mark because I figured he would like to know the results of the shipment and how it got there, because he cared about his business. Right. So I called him and I let him know, and I told him that it was dead, and I didn't expect anything out of it. I knew that it was my responsibility, if you want to call that, to accept whatever I got based on the fact that I didn't order next day. Well, a little while later, there comes this article in the ATS Journal,
Right.
where somebody's talking to Mark Hart, and or he wrote the article, I think. I can't remember, but anyways,
He did.
in
I
it
have
he
that
related.
article.
Oh, you've got it. Yeah, that's right. Oh, I've got it too. He related that story back, and in his view, I expected him to supply me with another one of these spiders, of the one that arrived dead. For whatever, why, I don't know exactly why he thought that, because in my opinion, I did not imply or make that any kind of indication that I thought he should do that. But
I imagine a number of customers before you had
I don't know.
expected it or implied it, and so he assumed that.
Yeah, but he used that particular example of mine and his transaction the thing that bothered me about it was he kind of made me out to be some kind of a dope or a bad guy over it. And it's like, well, no, Mark, I really didn't care. So,
If I recall, that was a Brachypelma clausi that occurred.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a Mexican pink or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah, you're right. That was. You're
yes.
right.
So
Yeah.
it was written, and you were somewhat vilified
Somewhat.
in a good-natured manner, as
Little
a
bit, yeah.
cautionary tale.
Yeah, exactly.
That, come on, guys, use next day. But
Yeah.
as you said, in your circumstance, you knew that you'd pay triple the fee and not get your animal next day.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I can see. Still in Roswell, when we ship a lot of things overnight, if I was gonna mail a letter to my next door neighbor, it would first go out of state
Yeah,
and then come back.
right.
Which obviously I wouldn't do that. But my point is, there are still areas that USPS won't service, which, now we have, FedEx and all that stuff, which is even more expensive. But,
Right.
yeah, kind of funny.
Yeah. But anyways, the thing about it was that I read the article and I was a little bit amused. In one way I was amused, but in another way I was a little bit irritated, because it's like, no, Mark, I wasn't expecting to get a free spider from you, so I wish you wouldn't have taken it that way, and certainly I
Yes.
wish you wouldn't have written it that way. But he never identified me by name.
Right.
He just called me
There were
a
some-
customer.
There
so,
were some distinct details, though, that indicated that,
yeah, that it
you-
was. Oh yeah, there's no doubt it was that transaction between him and I.
yeah, funny.
Yeah. So who's another guy? Talked about Mascareño. We talked about Rob Cherico. The other thing about we started talking about Bryant Capiz, and the thing about him that was very unfortunate is the kid was sharp, and he got good stuff in, and I ordered a lot of tarantulas from him. But the thing that was kind of sad, well, the fact that he committed suicide was sad, but one of the things that struck me is every time that I would talk to Bryant, at the end of our conversation, every conversation, the last words that he would say to me before he said goodbye was, "Happy, happy." And then I heard that he had killed himself, and it was like, wow, you just, it's weird, you just never know,
Well, a lot of times, these people that are ultra talented or passionate, musicians, or people that just are very talented in one extreme, they're also passionate, and a lot of those people struggle.
Right.
It's like they're unstable because you can't excel that much in one direction.
Right.
And, people either flatline and they're kind of average or neutral, or a lot of times they excel extraordinarily. But, like, look at Robin Williams. It's sad. It's, they burn brightly while they're here, and then
Like a comet across the sky, as they say.
they're gone.
Yeah, but let's see, who are some of the other people? Talked about Al.
What about Russell Smith?
Oh yeah, Russell, yeah. Well, we met Russell at one time down in Houston.
Uh-huh.
Remember that? We were.
I had ordered something from him,
Yeah.
and he met us at a friend of mine's, and yeah, he didn't He didn't hang out with us for very long. What
No.
what was he bringing me?
Well, he brought, as I recall, damn this phone. As I recall, he brought with him a bunch of different brachypelmas, and most of them were Smith eyes, if I recall correctly. And I had never met, I had talked to Russell a number of times, but I had never really actually met him before. So the first time that I met him is that time we went to that, I think we were in Houston to go to a reptile show way back then. And Russell showed up because he lived within a reasonable distance to be able to drive there.
Right.
He lives, or at the time it seems like he lived in St. Louis or something like that, but it wasn't an out of the question far drive for him. So he came and met me and you, and he brought these tarantulas that you had bought from him, and I seemed like I got some too. I don't remember exactly all the different deals and things that I've done over the years. But it was great to meet him, and he seemed like a really nice guy too, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook, although I haven't had any contact with him. And since that time, as a matter of fact, I don't think I've talked to or had any contact with Russell since. But
What about Andrew Smith?
seemed like a nice. I've met Andrew Smith. He doesn't remember, I'm sure, because it was at an American Tarantula Society convention that he was one of the speakers at. And he had come out with his book, or one of his books, and he was having a signing. So I, of course, lined up and got him to sign, a copy of his book for me. And we had some very quick small talk, but that was about it.
I met him once in 2006 or 2007, and he just put out part 3 of a really cool documentary
Oh yeah.
that he's been working on, so everybody watch that. I can put links to that. And I'm actually going to be interviewing him, I think toward the end of the year. He said he was going to be traveling abroad most of the year. And so last I spoke to him, he said, yeah, I can... I think we actually chose a date, and it's going to be around the end of the year. But yeah, wow.
That'd be cool.
His expertise is truly amazing.
Oh,
and, I love that he studies the natural history of the animals, and I think it's really incredible that he's, still around the tarantula world.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that a lot of these guys that we've talked, or most of the guys that we've talked about, including even me, have kind of come in and gone out of the tarantula hobby. I, for a long time there, was really into the breeding and the keeping, and then, I got married and had a kid and kids and ended up getting out of it, and I'm now starting to dabble a little bit again. But there was one time that I had close to 1,000 or even over 1,000 tarantulas that I was taking care of and breeding and everything like that, and now I've got maybe 5 tarantulas.
You have
So yeah. So yeah, that's the way it seems to go, is that people get into the hobby. Oh, then there's other guys that have been in and out. There's John Apple, Kelly Swift.
Oh yeah, and Kelly's still doing it.
Yeah. I'm friends with both those guys on Facebook.
So Kelly, he had that terrible fire. I don't know. I want to say that was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I didn't even know anything about
He had, oh gosh, that was a terrible tragedy.
Go ahead.
He had a heater malfunction that I think he was using to light or heat some crocodilians or something. He's told me the story. And it burned up and burned down his entire building. And the shame of it was, of course, that animals lost their lives, but his entire adult breeding invert collection, which was massive.
Really?
All of his reptiles. And he had a beautiful pet bird. I'm trying to think. It might have been an African gray, or it was something very personable that was his dear friend.
Yeah.
And, so of course, a fire, someone losing their business, but the loss of life. And luckily, this was one of the only lucky things about it, his nursery collection was in his house.
Wow.
And so he had to start over, from ground zero. He had the spiderlings that he had just reproduced, and that was it.
Well, that's something, but
Yeah.
I never dealt with Kelly. I understand he's a great guy, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, because I remember he always had great specimens, you know, but I never dealt with him, so I'm hoping that, you know, things go well for him and he gets back into it, or gets more back into it.
Yeah,
even
he's
than,
definitely
you know.
full back into it, full swing.
Good.
He's getting into bigger snakes again. I can't remember if he told me retics or berms, but he's building, and he's been building his new room, and surely it's done by now, because when he and I were on the phone like probably 2 years ago, he told me they were finishing it up maybe that fall, or that was the plan.
Oh, good.
And, you know, sent me pictures of stuff. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I have a lot of respect for him. And so Swift Invertebrates,
Right, yeah.
I pretty much refer people just to him, because he's the only one that's still around.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's probably other guys.
There
but
are.
I'm not
There are newer
I mean,
people.
again, there's people that come and they go, and they come and they go, and
they do.
And I get it, because it's, you know, a lot of times people put their hard money and soul into it, and they just don't make any of that money, or not enough back. And plus all the rules and regulations and
yeah.
guidelines, and the trouble getting, you know, fresh specimens and everything. And you know, they come and they go, and I get it.
Well, I think a lot
It's
of
just too bad.
people get excited about it, and they tend to kind of burn out, just like, you know, with other hobbies. And so
Right.
in the YouTube community, we've seen a lot of people come and go.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the first Tarantula YouTube channel, John 3800, John Sosiak, he's still at it. He's not as heavy into it, and he's working a lot, but he's still keeping tarantulas, so I have respect for him. Rob, I don't even know his name, Rob C.
Oh
Tarantula
yeah,
guy,
yeah, I remember
76.
that guy. Yeah. Yeah.
He had a pretty nice collection,
Yeah.
and you know, then he went through some things, and from what I know, which this may not be true, but I believe he got rid of his whole collection.
Yeah, I remember he used to have a big blonde eye, Theraphosa blonde that he used to like to kind of show off on
Yes.
his videos.
I think its name was Zilla. I don't know. It might have been a female, but yeah. Then he lost her,
Oh,
and
okay.
that was, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
He just didn't.
Yeah, and I haven't
Seemed to
seen
bounce
any of
back
his
from that.
videos for years now. I assume he's not making them anymore.
He's not, that I know of. Speaking of blonde eye, there was some species that was rumored to be larger than a blonde eye gigantea, or what the heck?
Hystrocades, not Gigas, it was Hercules.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what it was.
Yeah, that was, and it was. There was question in the field in general about the different Hystrocrades that were coming out of Africa. You know, some people were calling them Hystrocrades gigas, some were calling them Hystrocrades Hercules. Nobody seemed to know which was which and which was the true one. And then you throw in what used to be called Cythericius crotchei, which was also a kind of a Goliath baboon spider. And so nobody, for a little time there anyways, nobody really seemed to know what was what and what really was it was supposed to be the biggest one, and the ones that they were calling Hercules weren't really Hercules. And I think they finally figured that whole thing out, but for a while there it was kind of a mess. And yeah, one of the rumors was that, you know, this Goliath baboon spider was the biggest one in the world, and blah blah blah. But that really didn't pan out.
Speaking of teas that I haven't heard of in a while, this is a throwback. There was one you really liked called a Vicularia
bicolor. Oh no, it was that was
it
a
bicolor?
It was either, I think it was
Bisegoy?
Oh, Vicularia bisegoy. Oh, that one. Yeah. I had a real big specimen of that. Beautiful. Oh gosh, that was a beautiful Vic, and it was huge. I mean, as a Vics go.
Yeah.
And I had that for a long time. It finally died on me. I say that as if I was waiting for it to die, which I wasn't.
No.
But it was. I mean, its hairs were like the tips of its hairs were frosted,
Wow.
and it had pinks on it and reds and
I wonder
and
what's
all kinds
become
of.
of that species.
Oh, I don't know, but it was gorgeous, and that was for a long time. That was one of my favorite spiders because
Where'd that animal come from?
I don't even remember where I got it or what. I'm sure it came from somewhere in South America. I can't. I've been out of the
Yeah.
hobby now long enough that I don't even remember a lot of the names, a lot of the species that I had or that I bred. I'm trying to maybe get into it a little bit again, but I've forgotten more than
I'm
than I
gonna
ever
drag
learned.
you back in, kicking and screaming.
Well,
so
that
when
may
I
be.
reproduce from those animals that you're sending home with me, I'm gonna send you a bunch.
Okay, that'd be good because I'm really considering. And for example, I've got that Ephibophus Cyanoignathus that I'm sure is an adult female,
Yes.
and I would really like to try to breed her, but I
Yeah.
got to see if I can come up with a.
Well, I put out an
Adult
call
male.
today, and obviously we're up in the mountains, so we're out of range. But just you wait, my friend.
I can hardly wait.
I'll get you one.
So yeah, there's and I wouldn't mind getting into the Carabina
Yes.
versicolor again. I'd like to breed that one. Try to breed that one again.
That might be my favorite tea to raise up because
They're so gorgeous.
No, they're not only. First of all, they're just.
Have you ever been bitten by a tarantula, anyways? Speaking of which,
funny story.
funny
there.
you would ask, right?
Yeah, actually. So we did a video about that, and I don't know if people know this, they probably don't. I was kind of spoofing Rob C because he had gotten bitten by something, and in my opinion was being.
In my humble opinion.
In my humble opinion, he was being a bit of a diva about it. I don't know. I've really never taken any nasty venomous bites, so who am I to judge?
But no, you did get bit by
I
a
did.
versicolor,
I
didn't you?
did, and it was really just cute because I was handling a female gently. And,
Yes, of all species to get
Yeah.
bitten by.
And so we were getting ready to film, and she was just, I was walking her from one hand to the other, and she kind of slipped on my fingers, and two teeniest little pinpricks on my finger, and I said, basically she thought she was gonna fall for a second, which she didn't, she was fine. But I said, I think she just bit me. And so everyone was saying, are you hurt? Are you okay? And I said, yeah, it didn't hurt at all. And lo and behold, two little pinpricks of blood just welled up. I mean, not like dripping blood, just two little drops of blood welled up. She bit me. And I had absolutely no ill effect from it. I don't know if she didn't envenomate me or if their venom is truly that mild. I had no swelling, no pain, no itching, no anything at all.
No complaints, so you want to try it again, right?
I do. Well,
Yeah.
I actually honestly was somewhat afraid to be bitten from handling, which I don't
I've seen videos of you,
Well-
and we all have, with your hands and your tools, with some pretty aggressive species.
Yeah, if something needs to be caught or grabbed for its safety, I will. Or if something runs up me, I'm not going to fling it across. I'm going to safely, capture it. However, if I can put it in a net, or if I can. Somebody in my crew was bitten by an HMAC once.
Okay.
And she, it was one that ran off the table and was about to run underneath. We used to have a refrigerator out in our zoo that we would keep our rodents in and stuff, but we don't have room for it anymore. We have big deep freezes that are in another area, but so she cupped her hand over it, thinking it seemed still too small I wouldn't have thought it could have bitten her. But it did.
Yeah.
And she took it like a champ. We put the animal away, went inside, ran her hand under some cold water. She had some throbbing and swelling that night. We just did ibuprofen and ice. And the next day her hand was mildly swollen but a little stiff, and by the following day no effects.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty, I mean, that's an animal with some potent venom that really didn't hurt someone. I mean it hurt, but you know, when I tell people that tarantula venom is of no medical significance to humans, I really believe that. Now, granted, each person is different,
right.
And I absolutely am not condoning people trying to get bitten, because tarantulas are not happy if they're biting you. They think that they're in danger, and so don't provoke them to bite you. But people who go and find tarantulas and kill them, or kill them if they find them, that's just idiotic. And especially in the US, because the Aphanopalma, you know, species are so docile, they're not going to chase you down. Now, some of the old world species, I can see, you know, that
they can be kind of nasty.
Yeah, you know, I've read of accounts of people having some pretty serious effects from, you know, some Poecilotheria venom, but I really think it varies a lot.
Sure.
From, you know, people have talked a lot about Gila monster venom, and I've seen several people be bitten by them, and they clamp down, and it's a powerful bite, and their venom is an anticoagulant, and so they bleed. But it's not, from what I have observed from the 2 or 3 people who have been bitten by Gilas right in front of me, I didn't think it was a very big deal. I mean, it wasn't my blood, but
yeah, easy for you to say.
it wasn't. There were no tears. There was no stomping and crying. Although I did see a hilarious video of Cody Mackin in the hospital, who I think he worked at a Clovis Zoo. He supposedly had a Gila monster bite him on the foot, which, like, why were you out there barefooted? What was going on? Were you dancing naked in the rain? I mean...
Isn't that what everybody does?
Well, I do, but not with Gila monsters.
Oh, okay.
And
not as a dance partner, huh?
Right, yeah, I mean, yeah. So he is in a hospital bed with his legs suspended with this big ugly sore on his toe, and I'm like, so you have an ingrown toenail? What does that have to do with the Gila monster? And he's writhing around, and you know, I just thought,
not a happy guy.
What a wuss, I don't know.
Well, I had a Monocentropus balfouri male crawling up my arm today, not on purpose. I was trying to get him into a deli cup, and he decided he didn't want to go in there, and so he went up my hand, up my arm, down my back, and across my shoulders.
There we go.
But no bite, so that's a good thing.
And in general, you know, tarantulas are not aggressive animals. I don't know. They're just beautiful and amazing, and I think
like me and you.
Oh yes. Well, you know, your beauty exceeds mine by far. Speaking of beauty, what do you recall about the amazing Windex blue tarantula?
The amazing Windex blue tarantula.
That wasn't a versicolor.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing.
Street.
We had heard from Bryant Capiz back in the early mid-'80s. That there was a new tarantula on the market. It was a Windex blue tarantula. Bryant didn't know what it was. He didn't know the species name. All he knew is that he had either seen or had heard of this brilliantly colored Windex blue tarantula.
Yeah.
And you guys, for the longest time, none of us knew what it was. And then, you know, Bryant, of course, he ended up passing away, as it were. And none of us ever really were able to find out what tarantula he was talking about. And I know you guys were trying I kind of forgot about it.
I've been obsessed.
You couldn't let it go. And for years and years, nobody really knew. And the other day, well, you tell the story. You were interviewing Frank Soma.
Yeah, that's what it was. So I was trying to remember who told me for sure, and it was Frank Soma. So that's been a little bit back, but yeah. So I don't know. Have we talked about him yet?
Frank Soma? No, we haven't said anything about Frank.
Frank's the man. But anyway, yeah, so I was interviewing Frank, and I don't know if I spoke to him about it during the interview, or if he revealed that to me when we were just kind of chatting and hanging out after the interview. But when I asked him if he knew what Bryant's Windex blue tarantula was.
It's one of my absolute favorite moths in this state.
Awesome.
And then there's what we call coletta moths, Eupicardia coletta. That's a really pretty moth. There's all of the Eacles moths, Eacles oscillari, they're also called imperial moths. If you've ever seen the caterpillars of those things, they're like about the size of a cigar with horns poking out of them. They're absolutely incredible.
Cool.
What else are there? Oh, there's Rothschild Cincta moths, which is another kind of saturnid that's a little more uncommon, but they can be found in Arizona. So, I mean, there's just, and that's just the saturnids. And of course, there's all kinds of sphinx moths, numerous sphinx moths of all different species. And then on top of that are all the other smaller moths, some very spectacularly colored and marked.
Oh, yeah.
And then that's not mentioning the beetles, like you were talking about the Chrysina
man.
beetles earlier. You know,
Those
you've
are
got
insane.
all kinds of outrageous colors and sizes and shapes, and it just goes on and on. So it's it's just amazing. So yeah, there as a matter of fact is a cerambycid that I'm going to collect, because I don't know what this one is. And
That's, look, it's, well, that was white with black polka dots
was
on
it?
its
Yeah,
wings.
there you go. Prime example.
Awesome.
So,
well,
I don't know if
thank you.
did we talk about everything we were going to talk about? I can't remember what, because we had said we were going to do this little interview, and we thought about some things we wanted to talk about, but I can't remember if we covered them all.
Well, I think so, and if not, you'll just have to come visit me next.
Look at that moth. That's a really pretty little one.
Wow,
See that one?
with the yellow?
Yep. Yeah, that's a gorgeous moth. You don't see a lot of those. I mean, they're not like rare or anything like that. You still don't see a lot of them.
Well, so tonight we were lighting in the
Chiricahua Mountains.
Yes.
On Onion Saddle at the top.
Onion Saddle. And I was like moved to tears by the sunset earlier. I got a little bit cuckoo. And this has been the perfect ending to an amazing week.
Yeah, and you guys got to go home tonight, so
Yep.
that's too bad. But
Driving will be driving
all good things
till
must
the
come to an
morning.
end.
Yep.
But there's always next year.
Definitely. So thank you so much, Bill,
Well,
for
certainly.
hanging out and having a birthday. And
we all
being
do that.
awesome. Yep.
Last I heard, we all had them.
Yep.
Nope.
All right. Well, I guess it's probably almost time to tear down, so I guess we better start putting stuff away.
All right. Well, good night, everybody.
See you next time.
Good night, Lucy.